Alright, here we are in Adobe After Effects, and this is what we will be creating today. So it looks really nice, and as you can see, I have a backplate that is actually color graded to look like a night scene, and then I have it right here. If I just untoggle this, you'll see that I have a bunch of reflections added to the scene to make it look realistic. As you can see, it looks like a little 3D map, but it's just some kind of masks that I overlaid on my scene to fake the reflections of our portal here. Okay, so let's get started making this project file. I will say for this tutorial, to create the portal, you will need a plugin called Trapcode Particular, but if you don't have that plugin, you can go on our website and buy the Elements pack, and that will give you the exact same result, and then you can just skip ahead to the end of this tutorial where you can just see the color grading section, and then you will know how to integrate it into your footage. Okay, so I'm going to open up the file that we're going to use right now. Alright, so I have here my backplate, which you can download in the description for free, so you can follow along with this tutorial using the same footage. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing that we'll do is just create a new composition, rename this to Portal VFX. I'll make this full HD. Well, okay, there we go. 24 frames per second is okay, around 30 seconds. I'll make it 10 as it's just a tutorial, and then I will click OK. I will go back to my main composition, this one right here, go to composition and rename this to main comp, and I'll make this 10 seconds long. So there we can see it, it's exactly 10 seconds. Okay, trim comp to work area. I'm actually doing this using B and N to select a part of your composition if you didn't know that already. Here you go. Okay, so I'm just going to check the resolution. Okay, that's full HD, that's great. Let's go to the Portal VFX composition right here, and we'll start off creating a new solid layer, and we're going to rename this to Particles. Make it white and click OK. Well, actually, you can pick the color that you want, it doesn't really matter. And I will click OK. And then I will go to my mask tool, go to the ellipse tool, and hold Control. Well, actually, I will click in the center of my screen right here. So click, hold Control and Shift, and that's going to make you a perfect circle, just like this. I'll make a circle like that, and I'll actually hold space to move it up a little bit. And there we go. So this is going to be my circle. Okay, and there we have it. So what we will do now is go to Effects, Trapcode Particular, and there we go. And what we want to do actually is open up the particular effect in our layer itself. So go to Effect, Particular, Emitter, and then right here we'll see the position X and Y. What we want to do is open up our mask, go to the mask path, and go to Edit, Copy, and then click on the position X and Y and just edit, paste. And there you will see that you now have an animation like so, so your particles are actually following along with that mask, but it actually stops at the end of the mask, so we can easily fix that holding Alt and clicking on the stopwatch and adding a simple expression loop out, and there we go. Close the expression, and there we go. So if we're going to check this again, it's now going to start over and over and over again. So now we have a seamless, endless rotation here. So as you can see, it doesn't look very fast. So what we can do is actually select all of these keyframes, hold Alt and click on the last keyframe and just drag them in. So you're tucking them in, but this is also going to speed up your animation. As you can see right here, this is already a lot faster. Not fast enough though, so I'm going to make it like half a second. And there we go. So now we have a nice rotation, maybe even a little bit faster, because your portal actually goes really fast. But what you can see is, if you go really fast, and if we're going to the emitter, I'm going to increase my particles just so you can see, we're getting this choppy feeling right here. So what we can do to fix this is going to position subframe and go to 10x linear. That's going to solve that a little bit. Still, if you go way too high, it's still going to give you problems like this, so just keep that in mind. And yeah, so now we have a pretty fast motion, looks pretty good, and we can continue with these settings. So let's start off with 50,000 particles, which is a lot, but yeah, we'll use these. Go for a box emitter type. The direction can be directional, and the direction spread is okay. Let's go to the velocity and change this to -250. The randomness to 100, and the distribution can be 0, and the velocity for motion actually changes to 0, but what we will do is add an expression to it, so it kind of gives some kind of bursts. So just to show you what it actually does is, this is what's happening on right? Well, this is what's happening right now. If we're going to increase our velocity for motion, well, just set it at a low number, like 50, you're going to see that your motion, it's actually going to follow along. It's going to stay and move in that same direction that it's actually getting pushed at. So if we move up, these particles are going to stay and move up. So that's not what we want. So we're going to head up to velocity for motion, changes to 0, but we're going to hold Alt and click on the stopwatch and enter an expression wiggle, open parentheses, 1,5, and close the parentheses and close the expression. And there we go. So now what we will do, well, what that will do is give you some random kind of bursts. So at some points it's actually going to burst out and some points it won't. So we'll just keep that in mind. Currently you're not going to see that much because we're only affected by 5, but we're going to use it in a another particle set later on in this tutorial, so that's why I'm explaining it. Okay, for the X and Y particles emitter, change it to 20, and for the Z we can change it to 100. Now we can open the particle tab right here. For the life we'll change that to 1, the randomness to 35, the sphere feather changes to 0, so we have hard particles. And then for the size we'll change that to point or comma 7 and hit enter. So now we have small particles. The smaller the particles, the more detail you're going to get, and it's going to look like more finished in my opinion. So let's continue with the randomness. We can change it to 35 or actually 100, why not? There we go. So now we have even more detail in there. For the opacity, the randomness can set at 100, and the opacity over life, let's open that up and just draw here at the end and draw it down like so. So we have like a fade off at the end of our particle life. Okay, go to the physics tab, and right here we want to change the physics model from air to bounce. The gravity we can set that at 50. For the bounce, if we open up the bounce, we can give it a floor layer. So what we want to do is actually add a floor to our scene so the particles actually get bounced off the floor, like in our composition right here. So what I will do is actually use this file as a reference. So what we'll do is open up the Portal VFX, go to the project manager and add that element to the background. So drag it into your layers, and now it's at the bottom of our particle set. What we want to do is right click and change this to a guide layer. There we go. A guide layer is just to guide us to see some reference from the image, but it's not going to render out in the composition itself. So if we go to the main comp and we would add like the Portal VFX right here, if we're going to solo that layer, you're only going to see the particles but not the background. But if we go into this composition, you will see the background. Okay, so let's go to new solid and let's create it. Well, white is okay. Rename this to floor and click OK. Then go to toggle the switches if you don't see that, a 3D, enable the 3D mode for this layer and go to the rotation and just rotate it like this. I'm holding shift to actually make it snap, and then press V on the keyboard to have your selection tool and drag it down like so. I think it actually can rotate a little bit more, so I'm going to press W on the keyboard and actually just rotate it like so. So there we have it. This kind of is similar to the floor that we have here in the scene. You can actually make this longer if you want to actually really match it up with the floor. And as you can see, it doesn't look nearly as good. So what we want to do is actually match it up with our floor right here. Okay, so this is going to look more like it, I think. Okay. You don't need to make it longer, it's just purely for reference for myself. Okay, press R on the keyboard right here if you really want to toggle this down with the with the arrows up and down. And there we go. So this is kind of the floor that we have. Okay, so now once you have that, we can uncheck our floor layer and we can go back to our particles right here, go to the effects controls and drag down to the bounce layer so we can actually select our floor layer, click over here, floor. Currently it's not going to do much, but if we're going to see this, you're going to see that it's actually bouncing off our floor. What we can do is actually move our particles down a little bit. So click on the position X and Y, and go to one of the keyframes, so click on the arrow, and then we can actually move this down by dragging this right here. So there we go. We can actually delete the mask, we don't need it anymore. Okay. And now you can see that it's actually bouncing off our floor right here. So this looks pretty cool. Okay, so what you want to do now is go to the render and go to motion blur and just enable motion blur, so turn it on, and 360 sounds fair. So if you're going to zoom in, you're going to see that we now have motion blur, so off, and on. So this is going to make it look a little bit more realistic. Okay, looks great. We're actually going to change our bounce right here to stick, and that's it. Close this particle layer, close the floor, and we're going to click on our particles, hold Ctrl on the keyboard or Command for Mac and press D, and that's going to duplicate your layer. You can also go to Edit, Duplicate. And right here we want to do some changes to our settings. So we're actually going to, well, build up on the same effect that we already made, but just change a few settings right over here. So what I'll do is go to the particles per second, change that to 7,500, click OK, change this to a point emitter type. The velocity can change to -810. If we click on our layer, press E on the keyboard twice, we're going to see the layers that have a expression applied to it. So we're going to click on the wiggle right here and just change the 5 to a 25, and that's going to affect it a lot more. As you can see right now, we're going to get more bursts if it rotates. So there we go, we see the burst right here. The life can be 0.3. The size will change this to 1.4, and if we drag down here, we're going to collision event kill our particles. So this is not going to stick to the floor, we just want them to be removed from the scene. Okay, so that's all you have to do for this layer. Click on the layer again, duplicate it again, close this one. We'll build up on this one again. So go to the particles per second and change this to 15,000. Go to life, we'll change this to 0.6. And for our motion again, we'll press EE twice, so E on the keyboard, and just tap it twice and change this to 15. So we have a little bit of variation in our motion, well, velocity for motion. And that's all you have to do for this layer. Click on the layers again, well, click on the layer again, duplicate it, and change this to 2000. Change it to a box. Direction spread to 5. The velocity 130, and here 150, 150, and 100. Okay. For the life, we can change this to 0.08. Well, 0.8. The size will change this to, well, 1.4 is okay. And now what we want to do is, if we go to the opacity over life, we want to click on this last preset, and this is going to like sparkle our particles off. So they are going to stick on the floor, and then they are going to like sprinkle off our scene. So, well, in the opacity, I mean. Okay, so drag down to the bounce and change it on collision to bounce. And right here we want to give the bounce a percentage of 5 and 50 and 25. So these are all settings I've been testing out, and I think they seem to work. We'll change the shutter angle to 700, and if you're going to preview now everything together, we're going to see something like this. Alright, so that looks cool, but it's not perfect yet. The reason why is I have been doing my tests on 4K footage, and this is full HD. So what I'm thinking is that we have exaggerated a little bit in the velocity. So what we'll do is go to the direction spreads, change this to 10 for the first layer, go to the velocity -125, and just have all these values. Like for the size, we really want to narrow this down to like 0.4. And if we go to the second layer, we're going to do the same thing, -405, direction spread 10, and the size 0.7. And this is going to get us a little bit better looks. Okay, there we go. So now we have a little bit more detail in our shot, and we're going to do this for the other ones as well. So right here, -45.7. And now it's completely up to you. You can go ahead and maybe add a lot more particles in your original file right here. So in the first layer, you can change this to like 100,000. And this really depends on your system. But the higher you go in particles and the smaller you make them, again, this is going to look way cooler. If we go to that layer that has the bounce, so this is the last layer right here, we can actually go to the bounce. Then we can go to the life right here and maybe change this to 1.2 so they last up a little bit longer on the floor. So we can actually go ahead and solo this layer and check it out. Alright, we can go to the gravity, maybe change this to 75 so they fall to the ground a little bit quicker. Okay, there we go. So now we really have them flying on the floor, and this looks pretty cool. Okay. Okay, so once you have this, we can continue with our main comp. So go back to the main comp, and we'll see our portal on our footage right here. So we have it animating to our footage, looks pretty great. What we want to do now is click on toggle the switches and also change this to a screen. We actually want to go back to our portal VFX and make sure that all of our layers right here have a transfer mode of screen as well. So go to the particles. And go back to the main comp. If we go to our project manager, you will see right here that we're working in an 8 bits per channel workspace, and we want to change this to 32, change the workspace to sRGB, and linearize your workspace, and this is going to be better for visual effects. So click OK, and now we can do a lot more things with our glows and stuff like that. Alright, so now we have something like this, looks pretty cool. What I want to do now is give some color to my scene. What I like to use is actually Effects Video Copilot, the Color Vibrance. It actually is a really cool plugin that you can use, so I'll put a link in the description so you can go ahead and download that for free, and they're giving it away for free. So there you go, click on an orange color and click OK, and what that will do is give you some highlight colors and some darker colors. We can increase our vibrance to something higher, like 0.25. There we go. Maybe brighten the colors just a little bit more. Okay. What we want to do now is add some glow, so we'll use the Perfect Glow, which you can download on our website for free as well. And if we go to the glow threshold right here for the first glow, let's change this to 10 and go to the intensity, changes to like 0.07. We're going to get a nice glow like so. So this looks pretty cool. We'll close these all down like so. Without the glow, with the glow, looks great. Maybe you can change the radius to something like 15, and there we go. So now we can click on our portal VFX, and if you want it more intense, you can just duplicate that layer, and now we're going to get like more color in your portal. And yeah, now we already have a pretty good portal. What you want to do now is actually add some kind of reflections in your scene to make it look like it's actually integrated in our scene. So we're going to take a look at that right now. But yeah, so looks cool. We have them interacting with the floor, so great. Alright, so this is our portal. It's already interacting with our floor, so this is looking really cool. Of course, you'll have to change the resolution to full so you can see it fully. And now what we want to do is create a new adjustment layer. We're going to use this as like our inside of our portal. We're going to create a new ellipse tool, so go to the ellipse tool, click on your layer, click in the center, hold Ctrl and Shift, make a perfect circle, and just make sure that that circle is perfectly in the center of your portal. So there we go. And now what you want to do is actually add an exposure and add a turbulence displacement. Okay, I'm going to expose it a little bit less so it actually looks like it's like another dimension, or you can expose it more so it looks like there is some kind of inside in there. So that's completely up to you. Maybe a little bit darker is cool. We're going to place our adjustment layer below our portal VFX so it actually looks like this. Okay, cool. I'm actually going to make it brighter anyway. I'm also going to apply an effect called Color Correction Photo Filter, and we're going to set this at 100 or just a little bit lower. Custom, and pick like an orange color. So this is going to make it a little bit warmer, like so. Looks great. And now we're going to take a look at our turbulence displays. We'll change the size to 25, or actually 15. The amount to 75, or 100. Hold Alt and click on the evolution right here, and enter time times 250. And that's going to give an animation to the inside of our portal, and now it's going to look like there is another dimension in our portal. We can actually go ahead in the mask of our adjustment layer, open it up and increase the feather a little bit to something like 75. That's going to soften it a little bit. Maybe 75 is a little bit too much, like 50. Okay, and let's do a preview. And there we go. So you can really see that it looks like there is another dimension in our circle now. And now we'll continue with adding some reflections to our scene. So what I've done is actually really simple. I created a new solid layer and I picked a color that's really kind of a bright orange like so, and I renamed this to reflection. Click OK, and then we're going to pick our ellipse tool again, go to the center and make a perfect circle like so. We'll press F on the keyboard and feather it like so. Toggle the switches, make it a 3D layer, go to the rotation and rotate it like so. Or you can actually do this manually, and just with V and W you can click on that layer and position it in your scene, like on the floor right here. And maybe you want to make it a little bit bigger, put it below everything, so just above your background layer, and maybe position this right here. Toggle the switches, make this a screen blending mode, and press T on the keyboard. Just lower the opacity until you're satisfied. And as you can see, it's already going to look like it's integrating more into our scene. So there we go. We have some reflections to our floor without with, so it's looking a lot better. Maybe we can drag in our effect like this. Okay, looks great. I'm actually going to use another mask to cover that part right there, so I'm going to create another one right here and subtract that. Press F on the keyboard, subtract it, and actually make it a little bit longer on this side. Okay, so now we have some reflections to our street, and as you can see, it's already adding so much to the realism of our scene. So what I've done is actually duplicated that reflection layer, pressed M on the keyboard and deleted this, and just untoggled the eye right here, took my pen tool and zoom in on all the kind of detailed parts, like right here we have this tree, and we'll draw something like this on the trash here. Made something like this. I actually didn't do this, I made it like so we don't fill the black hole there. Same goes for, oh, close this down. Same goes for the bench right here. And as you can see, I'm not really doing this as exact as it should be, but it's looking pretty great anyway. I didn't take that much time in my preview as well, but you barely notice it, so. Okay. Zoom out a little bit and add one like right here. And I actually added some at the street right here as well, so because right here it's actually going in a little bit, and that can also add some reflections to our scene, like so. Okay, so let's say we have this, and we're going to enable our layer again. Press, well, click away. You're going to see something like this. We'll have to click on all of our layers, press F on the keyboard, just increase it a little bit. What you can do to actually see the result is toggle this right here, and this is looking pretty great, so I'm going to keep it as it is right here. I'm just going to try and find these right here because these doesn't look as good, so we'll toggle it on. Okay. Make it pretty thin. Let's say we're going to use these, and we'll click on our layer, press T on the keyboard, and just lower its opacity something like 1. And just adding 1 is already doing a lot, as you can see. It's very subtle, but you're going to notice it anyway. So what you can do now is hold Alt and click on the stopwatch for the opacity of this reflection. Click Wiggle, open the parentheses, and add something like every 35 seconds, like 35,1, and close the parentheses, click away, and now we're going to get, if we solid this layer, something like this. Now it's going to like flicker along with our portal. We're going to copy our wiggle preset and actually copy it to the other reflection layer, so press T on the keyboard, click Alt, and paste it right here as well. We'll close this. And now if we will do a preview, what you can do as well is just add like more layers and add like reflections to the bushes right here, to the house like right here. I actually added a lot of reflections, but this is already giving you a pretty good idea. So let's do a final preview. And as you can see right here, it's already adding a lot, but like this one right here is not really doing a lot. So press T on the keyboard and actually open up this one right here. It will actually change this to like 15 instead of 1. Close the parentheses. And this is going to do a little bit more. We can actually lower the opacity as well to something like 15. And that's going to be a little bit more realistic. Okay. Another thing that I've done is, because this is currently done at a static image, I added some motion to my scene using an adjustment layer, renamed this to shake, and I applied my wiggle preset, but I actually am working on a V2 version of this wiggle preset. I'm still working on it, but once it's done, I will release it with link in the description. So yeah, this wiggle preset, you can also go ahead and find this on our website already. Go to the frequency, changes to 5, 25, 5, and comma 5. And there we go. If we're going to do a preview with this, and there you go. So adding just a little bit of screen shake is really going to sell the effect. Maybe this is a little bit too much. You can go ahead and maybe narrow down the value here to 15. Let's do one final preview, but you're already getting the idea that it's like a real camera that is filming this shot. Of course, this is really selling it because we don't have any foreground elements, and otherwise you will actually need some kind of movement while you're filming your shot and then tracking it down to position your portal in there, and that's also perfectly possible, maybe even better, because real shake is always going to look better than fake shake. Okay, so this is basically how to create this effect. I hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. If you did, give it a like. Also subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and then I see you in the next one. Goodbye.